shared her experience as a child underneath the mushroom cloud. And Cynthia's father was part of the project to create that bomb that evaporated so many tens of thousands of people, that continue to cause cancer and ill effects into the generations. And it just goes to show you how short-sighted war is. Guys, I need your attention. This is really important. It goes to show you how short-sighted war is, because within a generation, you have two courageous women that are both saying nuclear weapons are immoral, they should be got rid of, we should be caring for the nuclear legacy that is being bequeathed to you, your generation should shut down nuclear power. Within a generation, we've moved from a daughter of one of the architects of the bomb and a survivor from Hiroshima sitting together in your school auditorium, offering you a vision of hope for a better world. So I'd like you to welcome Cynthia, Dr. Cynthia Miller, who is going to speak to you about her story.
So it's very hard for me to hear this story, and this morning was the first time I heard it, and so bear with me if I cry and it's hard for me to speak up. And this week is the first time I've ever talked about my story to anyone. So today I'm going to talk about who will clean up the mess. I'm Dr. Cynthia Miller. So I'm going to talk about my story, I'm going to talk about facts about radiation. And here is the first bomb. And I am a survivor of nuclear warfare, but I have never been in the presence of a bomb. I grew up in Southern California, but my father built bombs. He took radioactive uranium, and he built the plant that built the plutonium, and he transported those to Los Alamos, New Mexico, as part of the Manhattan Project. Everything he did was top secret. And I was born 7 months after the bombing of Hiroshima, and I was born with plutonium poisoning, but nobody knew about that. After both my parents died, I inherited these certificates, and that's when I could start to piece together my own life. With each one of these certificates, I thought it was only one bomb, but it ended up totaling 131 bombs that my father witnessed. This is the National Geographic, and my father's one there leaning forward. He would sit there with VIP seating, watching with goggles on, watching these bombs explode. I'm the little one in this photo, and that's before my father left for 13 months to build the world's first hydrogen bomb. Everything in our family was top secret, so when my father left, I never knew when he'd be coming home or if he would be coming home. He built the first hydrogen bomb, which was 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. I grew up in the Cold War, and my best friends up the street had a bomb shelter, and we would go play in the bomb shelter. But I could never understand how adults thought, because we were supposed to hide in the bomb shelter for a few days and then come out. But as a little kid, I could see the radiation. I could see the radiation going into the water. I could see it filling the air. And here I was at 5, and one night at dinner I said, who is going to clean up this mess? And I was sent to my room. It's the only time in my life I was sent to my room. We were always sick. Everybody in my family was sick. I used to throw up a lot. and I'd throw up for 8, 10, 12 hours at a time. I passed out 3 or 4 days a week, and I always had a headache. And these were things we never talked about in our house, because everybody in our family was sick, and I thought everybody always hurt. And so finally, when I was 26 years old, I had my first moment of no headache. And I was absolutely stunned. So I called all my friends, and I said, do you have a headache? And they go, no. And I call another friend, do you have a headache? And they go, no. And I'd say, I was absolutely amazed that everybody didn't have a headache all the time. It was beyond my reality to know anything about that. And since my house was so top secret, we couldn't talk about anything. So we didn't talk about our pain, we didn't talk about what we were experiencing. It was completely forbidden. For over 40 or 50 years, I would wake up in the night screaming in horror and terror. I'd have these amazing nightmares where I was just, it was awful. When I was 52, I was finally diagnosed with radiation poisoning. And that felt like rusted barbed wire was being ripped through my brain, and hot molten lava was running down my legs. And what the doctor did was he gave me chelation. And so I would get shots. I got shots all around my head and down my neck, behind my eyes, all down my arms, in my lungs, throughout all my organs, down my legs. I even got shots between my toes. And the shots were excruciatingly painful. I got 100 shots once a week for 1.5 years. And as the radiation was coming out of my body, I started painting. I'd get up in the night and paint with my hands just to get this energy out of my body. And 10 years after I created these pieces of art, I found the bombs on the internet that had just been declassified. And these were the bombs that my father built and that my father watched explode. And I was stunned to see the similarities between my art and my father's bombs. And this one bomb, the entire island evaporated. And when I created this piece of art, I just felt I had to do this circle, and I didn't know why at the time. So my father was the head of the South Pacific Proving Ground, and they had a total of 67 tests there, which was the equivalent of more than 7,000 Hiroshima bombs. And he sat there and watched all of them. Then he did tests in Nevada, and the radiation from the tests in Nevada has gone all across the entire United States. So the entire United States has been affected by radioactive fallout. And thyroid cancer is the fastest growing cancer, and that is also due to nuclear radiation. And this is a map of the world, of all the bombs that have been tested all around the world. You can see there have been 2,053 bombs. So there's nuclear radiation all over the world. The physical effects of radiation are vomiting, headache, diarrhea. It affects your brain, it affects your thyroid, it goes into your blood, and it causes cancer. It causes leukemia that my father died of, bladder cancer, breast cancer, stomach cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer, and thyroid cancer. And it also has this psychological fallout, which leads to severe depression and anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder, which I have experienced a lot of. Plutonium is a man-made substance. It doesn't occur in nature. And what happens when it gets in your body, it turns to self-hatred and self-loathing. And you absolutely feel like a piece of unlovable scum when radiation is in your body. When I was 60, I put everything in storage because I was moving, and I went camping for the weekend. I came out of the mountains, and I discovered that all of my life savings had disappeared in the stock market crash. I also learned that almost everything I owned had been stolen out of storage. So here I was at 60 years old, living in a tent in the wilderness for 2 months. I was extremely suicidal, and I'd been suicidal most of my life, but at this moment I decided the perfect way to commit suicide, because I'd had this electroshock in the back of my neck my whole life. It was kind of like this cattle prod of this electric energy hitting the back of my neck. And I just couldn't put up with the pain anymore, and everything was gone. So I felt no reason to live. So this is a cattle prod, and it's kind of like what it felt like in my neck all the time. And then this energy came up inside my body that said, choose gratitude. And I had absolutely nothing to lose. So I decided to do an experiment. And I decided to thank the pain. And it made absolutely no sense. But I did it anyway. So I thanked the pain in my neck. And as I did that, it started to shift. And over the next few months, I kept thanking it. It would change from hard to hot, and I kept spinning gratitude through all of this pain. And over time, the radiation and the pain in my neck started to diminish. And at some point, that particular pain vanished. So I decided to learn about how our brain works. And we have an ancient reptilian brain, which is the oldest part of your brain. It's about 500 million years old. And that's the part of the brain that works with fear. On top of that is your limbic system, and that is the part of your brain that seeks pleasure and avoids pain. And the newest part of your brain is the neocortex, and that's only about 2.5 million years old. And that's the part of your brain that has mathematics, that's your language. It's also the part of the brain that creates art, creates music. That's the part of your brain that has all your visioning. So when fear takes over, your ancient reptilian brain is the only part of your brain that works. None of the neural connections in the other parts of your brain function. So your thinking becomes dominated by fear. And so as you bring in gratitude, you can calm down the fear in your brain, and then you can start to think. But when you're in fear, it's impossible to think rationally. So our brain has survival mechanisms. There's the fight, which is the physical fighting, and this is when we go to war. And then there's flight, which is where we run away or we emotionally shut down. And then there's freeze, where we become immobilized or overwhelmed. Or you try and make yourself really, really small. Whenever any of these get triggered, they take over any rational thought you might have. So this is a picture of the wiring in Mexico, and that's kind of what our brains look like. We have all these layers and layers and layers of fear. And when that fear gets triggered, it takes over. So you could just be on the subway and maybe taking a test, and the fear gets triggered, and you won't be able to think clearly. But bring in gratitude, our neurons start to shift and your brain will change. If you're coming from a state of fear or anxiety, as you thank that part of your brain, or you thank whatever is happening in your body, it will shift. So gratitude has a very high frequency, and anger and fear have very low frequencies. And as you bring in this higher frequency, the lower frequencies come up to a higher frequency. So whenever you get afraid, you can always remember to thank the fear. Even though it doesn't really logically make sense, it works in our nervous system. So all this talk about radiation brings up a lot of fear in our bodies. And there's radiation from the bombs, but there's also radiation from the nuclear power plants. And this is a map after Chernobyl had its disaster. And then we have the Fukushima disaster, and you can see that the radiation is flowing all around. And this was just a few weeks after Fukushima. We're now 1 year later after Fukushima, and the monthly fallout is 10 times greater than it was last September. There have been several radioactive leaks into the oceans. And the radiation levels in the seaweed in Southern California is 500% higher. And all the milk that you're drinking, the radiation levels are about 2,000% higher than EPA standards. So what the EPA has decided to do is just to raise the levels that are acceptable. And they've raised those levels. So the half-life of plutonium is 24,000 years. And half-life means the amount of time a substance takes to become half of its size. So plutonium is a man-made substance that happens by splitting the atom. And when this takes place, it releases great heat and energy. And that's how your power plants work. So Nelson Mandela has said that education is the most powerful weapon that we can use to change the world. After Fukushima, I started talking to my friends, and they were all in such a state of shock that their brains weren't functioning. And I was stunned that these adults weren't thinking clearly. And then I realized that they needed to bring in gratitude into their brains so that they could think clearly. As Einstein has said, we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. So if we are creating something out of fear, we're going to be creating more fear in the world. And as you start to bring in more gratitude into your brain, and that your brain becomes more peaceful, then you can start coming up with better solutions and better ideas. And I know that each one of you is brilliant, and so I invite you to do a little test and just see what happens when you bring in gratitude. When the fear arises, just thank the terror, and then just take a deep breath. Another thing you can do is start a radiation detection program. And you can share everything you're learning with your friends. You can share it on Facebook and Twitter. And then keep bringing gratitude into your own nervous system to start changing all your old patterns. As Gandhi says, you can choose to be the change you wish to see in the world. And together, we can create a better world for all. I know that each one of you has an amazing gift to give, and I invite you to do a little experiment with gratitude and see how that works. And thank you that together, every one of us can create a world of peace and harmony for everyone. Thank you so much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a couple of minutes. I wonder if any of you would like to offer up some comments or ask our guests any questions. Any comments or questions from you? Okay, so we have two of the same questions, which is for Reiko-san. And did you find it hard to forgive? Do you mean the United States?
To forgive anybody that had something to do with the atomic bomb.
Did you find it hard to forgive anyone who had anything to do with the atomic bomb?
別に私はそれは原子爆弾というのは大変な武器が新しい武器ができたものですけれども、それを私はよく質問でアメリカを恨みますか、何を恨みますかと言われますけれども、その人たちはその人たちなりにその時は新しいものを作るのに一生懸命だったでしょう。ですから私も今回初めてこのお話を聞きました。で本当にそういうことをお父様が一生懸命なさってたということは、それは恨みではなくて、これは一つの仕事としてなさったんだと思うのです。ですから彼女は私の話を聞いて本当に苦しむと思いますけれども、私たち被爆者は別に戦争法にいたのは日本ですし、また日本の国もいろいろなことをよその国にしていますので、やはり戦争をなくすこと、そして武器をなくすこと、これからもそれを課題として私たちが取り組むべきだと、将来のために取り組むべきだと、恨むとか復讐とかそういうことは考えられないので、これからのために私たちは力を出していただきたいなと思っています。
So really how I feel is that I actually often get asked the same question if how I feel about the United States or the people who were involved to make this nuclear weapon. But my understanding, everybody that was involved was just doing their job, what they were assigned to do at the time. And actually this was my first time as well that I listened to Cynthia's story and her father's story. And I do really think, her father was just doing his job at the time. And I know that she's really having a hard time and it's not easy for her to listen to my stories as well. And also in terms of history, I mean, Japan has also made a lot of people suffer as well. And what I believe, the message I have is it's the war and it's the weapons that really create these tortures, and I just don't want them to exist in the future for all of us. So it's not about having a hard feeling or making any revenges over anyone. It's about creating a better future.
Okay, any other question or comments? It's often really wonderful to hear from the students what it was like for you to hear the story. You have the opportunity to say something now. So, any questions or comments? Would you mind coming up to speak in the mic? Okay, then shout it out and I'll repeat it.
Alright, I want to ask the daughter, Sydney, yes? Cynthia? Cynthia, yeah. I want to ask her, does she still have her father's documents and certificates from the bombs? Because I know that she got robbed. Is that right? Yeah, does she still have them?
Yes, it's amazing. The documents all survived and the art survived. Most everything else got stolen. And another body of work of my art survived, but it all molded. But all the stuff all the art that I made when the radiation was coming out of my body, none of that molded, so it's probably very radioactive.
Everyone should stay seated until 3:30.
Do you still have
What happens is the plutonium goes inside your bones, and so it's been coming out of my body, and with the chelation, with all those shots, most of it came out, but I still do have it. A few weeks ago, I still was vomiting for 12 hours at a time. That still happens. I still get lots of headaches. And since plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years, even if there's just a little bit of it, it'll always be in my body. It can go to my children, yes. You can't get it from me by standing near me, but yes. So it can be passed down through generations. I was conceived with it from my father. My father transported the plutonium to Los Alamos, actually. And what it does is it travels in his body, and then from him, I was created with plutonium. So I've had it my whole life. And I didn't know, I knew I was sick, and I would go to doctors, and they would always tell me I couldn't possibly have it, because I grew up in Southern California. So I wouldn't have had any children if I had really known that I had it. I have one son.
My question is for her.
Cynthia, for Dr. Miller, yeah?
Did your father ever blame himself for your injuries and all that for participating in the mob?
Who's your dad?
And who's your dad? What's his name?
So yes, if my father blamed himself for my injuries. He was dead by the time I was diagnosed with plutonium, so he didn't know that. And he was always sick, and we were always sick, so it kind of never occurred to anyone in my family that anything was kind of different. And your second question was?
What's his name?
Oh, my dad's name is Elas Colas Van Dyne, and you won't find him anywhere. He was so top secret that he had a higher security clearance than Oppenheimer. And you can search everywhere for him and you'll never find a word about him. And Robert Oppenheimer is the man the physicist who developed the bomb. But my father had a higher clearance than him because my father built it.
Another question?
Cynthia, how do you feel that your father took part in making these bombs? They killed so many people.
How do I feel about that? This has been a lifelong struggle of mine. I'm gonna try. As a child, I really loved my father. And as I grew up and I saw what he did, it's been very, very difficult to reconcile this. And when I was 5 and I was saying, who will clean up the mess, that's kind of been with me my whole life. So that's why I'm here right now, and all my work my whole life is about trying to figure out what I can do. And I have felt extreme guilt and shame for what my father has done.
学というのはやはり作る側も作った側もまたそれあった側も同じ犠牲者です。戦争をした側両方ともやはり同じ責任を持たなきゃいけないわけですから、特別に私たちこれからこの2人で になってお話を続けていくと、皆さんがさらにいろいろなことが分かってくださるんだと思います。
I feel that, especially when it comes to nuclear, but with any wars, it's either whoever made the nuclear weapons or whoever were the victims of it, both are the victims, really. And it is whoever took the part in the war have the exact amount, the same amount of responsibility. And I'm feeling that today I'm giving this talk with Cynthia, and I feel like it really gives a wide range of different perspectives into the same matter.
I feel like my father had a hand in changing the course of world history, and my dream is for me to have a hand in changing world history, in creating more peace and harmony for everyone on the planet.
So I think that that's a really appropriate way to end this conversation for now before I pass the mic over to Yolanda, which is to say that Einstein said, with the splitting of the atom, everything's changed except our way of thinking, and so we drift towards unparalleled catastrophe. What he meant was, we really don't understand what nuclear weapons and nuclear power bring. He said they change everything. So I think still today, people who are involved in designing nuclear weapons, people who are proponents of nuclear power, don't understand the legacy and how what we're creating today will affect, in the case of plutonium, the next 12,000 human generations. So this story that we're all a part, this story, remember we talked about what we love and thinking about how we want to use our life to save what we love, that nuclear weapons and nuclear power threaten what we love. This story continues in all of our hearts, whether we recognize it or not. And I think today we've all been witness to something very precious, and it's been a huge privilege to be here together with you all as we see the power of reconciliation through the years, as we see the power of compassion, and as we see the power of what we can do with right action. And I guarantee you, each one of you in this room, including all of us, that when we choose to do something with our lives that is outside of our own personal sphere, when we choose to take on something that is bigger than ourselves, whether that's ridding the world of nuclear weapons or working for civil rights or what have you, we engage in a life of adventure and increased opportunity, increased love and connection. So let this moment that you witnessed of reconciliation help propel you into a life where you use your energy to create something positive and help make a change in our world. And I believe that all of you will do that. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, everyone, this afternoon for hearing the stories of the Hibakusha Stories. And I'm so honored that you're here and that you come by, and we'd like to honor you with some flowers, if you could bring them over. It's really important for us to see that we have a personal responsibility, what is our personal and collective responsibility for creating a community of peace. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a gift for your school. This gift
cranes, your wish will come true. So not only are we giving your school 1,000 paper cranes, but we're giving you 1,000 sheets of paper so you can make your own paper cranes. And one other thing that I have for you that Hibakusha Stories would like to give to Eastside Community High School. This is really precious, and I really hope that you all will nurture these seeds. These are seeds from the aogori tree. It is a tree in Japan, in Hiroshima, that survived the atomic bomb. And with so many trees and plants and animals and people that died, there was a great deal of love and appreciation for those trees that survived. And this particular tree has been propagated and spread through its seeds all over the world to stand as a symbol for peace and a symbol for a nuclear-free world. So there's 4 seeds in this video. We want you to